Alright, one last time. Here's Operation Flip Class 2, just so that you guys have enough time to work on the project. So let's go. You guys should be on a sheet called Power 12. It looks something like this. And for the most part, we're just going to be here, but I'm actually telling you that you have to watch this 5-minute, 10-minute video because it's Obama at the start of his term talking about his cabinet. And it tells you pretty much all the basic stuff, which I'm going to do a little bit of rehashing on, but that video is definitely important. Cool? Cool. All right, so with that being said, skip the skits we're going to watch in class, blah, 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 blah. Skip the video that you have to watch right here. It's a good one. Right, and go into the cabinet in general. For first and foremost, like pretty much everything that you're going to write down here is going to be on either part 2 or part 3. Part 2 or part 3, changing that number. So let's go. The Constitution doesn't say the cabinet should exist, right? The cabinet was something that was born out of necessity because the president, George Washington, realized that it would be untenable in order to run the country by just himself. And so, like they said, may require the opinion in writing of people in their cabinet departments. And so that even says how you appoint someone to the cabinet. You say, I want this person on the cabinet. And then that guy will advise the president on whatever matter they are chosen to advise the president on. With that being said, cabinet, the easiest way we can say it is it's 15 advisors on 15 issues. That's what the cabinet is. And then when we think of a new issue that's important enough, like the internet becomes, or technology becomes so important, well, then we'll have the Department of Technology as the 16th issue. But right now we only have 15 important issues with 15 assigned people to them. The cabinet qualifications are none. Anyone can be a cabinet officer. They are in line to become president, as we said. And so, in Amendment 25, it goes in order of most recent to, sorry, oldest cabinet department to most recent. And so we're going to see the order. And if someone was like foreign born, they wouldn't be able to be president even though they're in the line of succession, and it would just skip them. But there are no requirements. You could be any age. You don't even have to have a background in the industry. But we'll see on the next slide why you kind of have to be qualified. A cabinet rank department, well, that's in the video, so no, that you have to watch. The head of the department is called the Secretary of Blank, and whatever the name of the department is, with 2 exceptions. The head lawyer for the United States, the guy in charge of the Department of Justice, is called the Attorney General, right? And then the person in charge of the Department of Health and Human Services, instead of the person in charge of like the health of the United States, instead of being called the Secretary of Health and Human Services, is called the Surgeon General. And besides that, everyone else is Secretary of blank, except for Attorney General and Surgeon General for Justice and Health and Human Services. With that being said, the executive agencies are groups. Sorry, let me pause it. Okay, sorry. Executive agencies are departments which help cabinet departments fulfill goals. And so an example is OSHA, like the Department of, okay, this will be easier, agriculture. The FDA is a regulatory agency that makes sure that the food and drugs that you're taking are safe and healthy and all follow all these standards, right? The FDA is part of the Department of, um, what did I just say? FDA is part of the Department of Agriculture, and they are an executive agency. And so what we're going to say is like, yeah, the department is going to be doing all these things, but they need smaller groups within them to actually make these policy goals happen. And so it's subdivided into like, we call them like the alphabet soup, 3-letter agencies that do the goals. The last one is the opinion clause, which is right there. It just says this. The thing that we just said, that's the part of the Constitution that enables the cabinet. All right, cool. With that being said, not anyone can become a cabinet official. This is a fun chart on the right that shows how many people inside a person's cabinet have lack a public service experience, which is just a fun one. But at the end of the day, those people still got onto the cabinet because the president appoints and the Senate approves. And so if the Senate approves someone, well, then that is our government check and balancing, making sure that they are qualified. This is a kind of fun link where you can see why people were not approved. I don't know. I just clicked a random one for Obama, and it was just like he was not approved because he had a very close friendship with a person who was a lobbyist, and because of that, he might have been skewed. Right? I don't know. People do get failed. It isn't super uncommon. Trump had two. Obama had a couple too. But for the most part, like, uh, especially if your party is in control of the Senate, you're going to get whoever you want, and that's another thing that may have added to more people without public sector experience getting approved for Trump. All right, that's a matching. I'm not going to do this, but I might put one of these on the notebook check. But well, we're going to go over these different departments real slowly. This was a part 3 that's on it. I just want you to see when we talk about qualifications, like the last 4, and just consider like the order or who might or might not have been the most qualified. So if you want to pause it for a second and try your best to guess who you think would be the most qualified, that's cool. But know that each one of the 4 was approved. So you can pause. And typically, I would say if we were going to order these from 1 to 4, I'd probably give Mary E. Peters the most qualified, right? And then it's kind of hard to tell, but I'd go probably maybe this guy for second. Chow or Buttigieg would be 3 or 4, and it's up to you. A lot of people didn't like Buttigieg as Biden's pick for Secretary of Transportation, the person that's supposed to make sure our like transportation infrastructure is up to snuff. Because he had only been a mayor of a city. And if you want to think about, like, I guess the 2 recent train accidents, they were caused by our transportation infrastructure being bad. Or the recent plane, like, flybys in the last, like, 4 months, there's been a couple planes that have been, like, one's landing and then the other one's taxiing. And there's been, like, 4 near crashes. That could be a transportation issue, right? If they certainly had crashed, there would have been a look into it. But if we regulated the railroads more or the airplane industry more, maybe those things would be less prone to happen. So anyways, I don't know. It could be 3 or 4, whatever way you want it to go. But think about it. Like the only thing that you could pick anyone in the United States. And so was the mayor of a small town the best choice? Was a person who was Secretary of Labor and somewhat related, the second person in Department of Transportation, but didn't get chosen in 1989, the best choice? I don't know. But you can see like these 2 people's backgrounds looks much less than these 2 people's backgrounds. And so, but the Senate appointed them in both cases. Okay, we're going to watch this video next TED Talk because it's a goodie. And skip that. This was a fun assignment that I used to do. And this is just like a list of proposed cabinet departments that have been proposed over time. None of these have picked up, and some of them are probably super out of date now, but who knows? Maybe this will be the 16th cabinet department. All right, with that being said, here's a slideshow that just has some things about the cabinet that I want you to write down and know. Cool. All right, first and foremost, the most important thing is to look at the number in the top right. The first 4 slides are the original cabinet, and that's definitely something I want to put on the notebook check. And so the first 4 departments were Secretary of State, which is by far the most important cabinet department. Right now, these are not the current. This was Obama's, this was Trump's, and I never put up Biden's. But Biden has Anthony Blinken being the current one. Don't write that down. That's a waste of your time. But, he is the person that's responsible for dealing with our foreign policy. I heard just yesterday on NPR that he talked to his Russia counterpart, their Secretary of State, for the first time in a year because, well, Ukraine started about a year ago. And so it was the first time the United States foreign policy guy talked to the Russian foreign policy guy. Secretary of State, I know it doesn't, you represent the state of the United States. That guy is responsible for our foreign policy if the president doesn't feel like it, right? Each one of these guys, you can think about, well, the president can delegate all of this and worry about whatever issue is more important. If we're at war, well, then this guy is 100% responsible for, well, he's probably not going to be responsible for foreign policy, but like then the agriculture guy is 100% responsible for agriculture because president has more important things. The second one, Department of the Treasury, made by George Washington because he realized, well, we need to make sure our budget is good. And so, one more time, neither of these guys are the current one. And the fun thing that you can also do on this slideshow is stare at the logos. Isn't that fun? Everyone likes staring at the logos. That's a good one. All right, you can see the IRS is one of those executive agencies within it. U.S. Customs is one of those executive agencies within it. Department of Defense originally was called Department of War, and so that's why the number's not 1797. And also, instead of having like all of the military services in one, it had like there was this Department of the Navy and Army, and then they combined them to the Department of the Defense in 1949. So technically not part, but also still part because there was someone in charge of the military as one of Washington's 4 advisors. Usually it's a military general because the person in charge of the military should be a military general. Fair enough? Fair enough. This is the department that has the most money and has the biggest budget. Cool. The very last of the 4 is the Department of Justice because, one more time, we need someone to decide what the legal direction of our country is. This guy is the Attorney General, one more time, or they were the Attorney General. And whenever we think about, like, I guess, immigration and Trump, right? Like the person that was deciding, like, to what extent will we punish illegal immigrants, right? Should we just send them back without a trial? Well, that's a Department of Justice issue, right? Like, to what extent should we enforce marijuana laws right now? Like, the Department of Justice is the one that's thinking about that. All right, now we're going to have 3 minutes to go over the rest of the 9. So let's do it quickly. So now we're going to start going into when they were added later, and that's really the only interesting thing that I can say. You can see the different executive agencies under them, and you can read what they are supposed to do. And if I have a good reason why it was added, well, I'll try to say that. To me, I think this is like a manifest destiny westward expansion. That's why it was added. We found out that there were more lands. We started exploring more lands. And then we realized that some things need to be protected, right? The story about national parks was they were made after whatever president it was went to Yellowstone. And for that reason, right, the Department of Interior was made to protect our natural resources. Department of Agriculture. We are industrializing as a country, and because we're industrializing as a country and people are stopping to create less of their stuff, there becomes a need to regulate the things that are created, and thus the Department of Agriculture is created. Department of Commerce, same kind of idea. We are becoming a more industrialized country, and so, you know what, I don't have a great reason for this one, but you can see it. It's fun. Cool. Supervise trade, promote tourism. I don't think that one really lines up. All right. This one, though, Department of Labor, absolutely the Industrial Revolution, right? When they talk about The Jungle, a book you might read in college, they talk about how like kids are working up until in the early 1900s. And people are dying and like having terrible working conditions, and that's what the Department of Labor is literally there to address, making sure working conditions aren't bad. Health and Human Services. This is after World War II. We could say it's because of a need for people to be fit. I don't know. I don't have a great reason, but health and well-being of all people. And one more time, this is the Surgeon General. Surgeon General instead of Secretary. So that's on me, but Social Security Administration, the Centers for Disease Control, National Institute of Health, and the FDA apparently is there and not the Department of Agriculture. Don't quote me. Housing and urban development. Our urban areas become more and more populated, and there becomes a need to make sure to regulate them. Cool. Department of Transportation. It's a Cold War thing. They say the highways were created for the Cold War, and so we need a system to transport people quickly. Department of Energy. The president at the time, Jimmy Carter, was really about energy. He put panels on top of the White House. There you go. Education. I don't have a reason why education. Veterans Affairs. Vietnam veterans are getting old. And lastly, Homeland Security. 9/11. There you go. That was quick.